Welcome to a series of videos relating to the formal elements that we're talking about in class this week. This first video relates to color and light. The definition of color fairly simply says that color is derived from the spectrum of light which refracts and appears to the human eye as the three primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, and that these primary colors can then be mixed to create secondary colors, including violet, orange, and green. Color can be one of the most powerful elements within a work of art. It has been scientifically proven that color elicits an emotional response from us, and artists are pretty aware of these responses. For example, red creates a strong energy and is often used in restaurants as it encourages eating. Blue, by contrast, lowers blood pressure, pulse, and respiration rate, in addition to discouraging eating. Surprisingly, bubblegum pink has proved to be one of the most calming colors. When fully surrounded by it, many people fall asleep while others go into a calm and meditative state. Color is a function of light. The colors we see in the rainbow are the result of refracted white light. White light is the presence of all colors, and by contrast, black is the absence of light and therefore the absence of color. So as you can see here in this prism, white light on the far left is refracted through the prism into the colors of the rainbow. The color wheel is used to distinguish different colors. The hue of a color refers to the name of it on the color wheel. For example, yellow, orange, red, etc. While the value is the relative lightness or darkness of a color. So you can have a very light yellow and a very dark yellow, but they are all still the hue of yellow. There are three primary colors, red, blue, and yellow, from which all other colors can be made. By combining two primary colors, you create a secondary color. These include green, orange, and violet. And by combining a primary color with a secondary color, you get a tertiary color. For example, yellow-green, yellow-orange, red-orange, violet-red, blue-violet, and blue-green. You could continue to combine tertiary colors with secondary colors or tertiary colors with primary colors and continue to make more and more and more hues out of these various combinations. Depending on the effect that an artist wants to create, they will adjust their color palette. This image, called Broadway Boogie Woogie by Piet Mondrian, relies on the primary colors. Anytime an artist uses three colors that are equidistant from each other on the color wheel, it is called triadic color. By equidistant, I mean these three colors, the primary colors in this case, are as far apart on the color wheel as possible. They don't have any other colors in common. The colors all contrast one another, and no one color automatically stands out more than another. Yellow is particularly dominant in this image, not only because there is more of it than red and blue, which mimics the lights of New York City. So it is intentionally dominant to really create this effect of light. The simplicity of the color palette allows equal emphasis between shape and color. Colors can also be divided into warm and cool colors. Warm colors are any colors on the color wheel from yellow to red-violet, while cool colors are those from violet to yellow-green. By grouping either warm or cool colors together, artists can change the emotional impact of their image. This image by Mark Rothko, Orange and Yellow, relies on warm, analogous colors, colors that are close to one another on the color wheel, which creates a sense of heat reminiscent of the sun. Warm and cool colors also hold different visual weights within an image. So warm colors tend to feel lighter, while cool colors tend to feel heavier. And even within Rothko's painting, the red-orange weighs down the bottom half of the image much more than the brighter yellow does on the top. The orange in the background kind of creates a contrast and a framing for both of those colors. When multiple values or shades of a color are paired together, it is called monochromatic color. So in this image by Inka Essenhai called In Bed, the image is filled with different values of blue. Every color in the image is blue. Some are very, very dark and some are very, very light. Some of these dark blues are so dark that they almost look black, while some of the light blues are so light they almost look white. Monochromatic color creates a sense of unity through an image while providing some contrast of color. So We have a lot of visual interest here. There's a lot to look at, a lot of variation, but by using all shades of blue or hues of blue, the image overall has a sense of unified quality. In the 19th century, the French painter Georges Seurat developed a unique style of painting that scientifically explored the way the eye perceives color. Known as pointillism, this style uses tiny dots of contrasting colors to help a particular color stand out more. For example, the woman on the far right in this image Sunday afternoon on the island of La Grande Jatte is wearing a purple/gray dress. Most dots of color are purple or dark brown, but if you look closely, you will also see green and yellow, helping the purple stand out as the dominant color. This is an effect caused by complementary colors, which are opposite one another on the color wheel. For example, yellow and violet, blue and orange, red and green are all examples of complementary colors. Seurat learned that if a dominant color is paired with a small amount of its complementary color, the eye naturally blends the two together, making the dominant color stand out even more. So throughout his pointillist images, which, by the way, were painstakingly done over a very, very long time, so he has relatively few of them, but if he used this process with science and the science of color, he was able to create these really dynamic images in a way that is very different from the typical approach that a painter takes. The absence of color can be equally powerful within a work of art. Picasso's Guernica commemorates the vicious bombing of a Spanish town in Guernica, Spain, during the Second World War. Spain was going through a difficult revolution, and the Spanish dictator Francisco Franco reached out to Hitler to help put down a revolution. Franco promised Spain would join the Nazi German reign if Hitler came to his aid, and in response, Hitler bombed the civilian town of Guernica as a lesson to the Spanish people. Picasso was devastated by the bombing and painted the enormous Guernica mural in response. Although it was an unusual choice, Picasso declined to use color in the mural. The absence of color forces us to look closely at the pained expressions on the figures' faces, the severed body parts, and to feel the overall chaos and pain of the day. Black and white is also reflective of the manner in which the world would have learned about the bombing of Guernica. This is pre-internet, when most people got their news out of a newspaper. And so there are sections of the painting that are made to look like newsprint. It is also important to note that any color here would have been highly distracting. The most expected color would most likely have been red for blood, but the use of red here would have overwhelmed the image. By only using black and white, Picasso forces viewers to focus on the event itself and not be distracted by the aspect of color. Moving on to light. Light value refers to the amount of shading from light to dark within a work of art, and it can be natural, man-made, or imagined. Light within a work of art is an important element for an artist to consider. The source of a light illuminating an image often dictates location and color palette. It can also play into the emotional impact of color within a work of art. There are three types of light which can be used in a painting. The first is natural light, meaning sunlight. This requires either an image be set outdoors or include an image, but it is the easiest form of light to incorporate. The second type of light is man-made. This can mean a lamp, fire, candle, and it can be combined often with other light sources or be used on its own to create a more dramatic shadowy image like this one here. The third type of light is called implied light. And in this case, there is no visible light source, and yet we can still see the image. Implied light was commonly used in medieval and Renaissance painting, and any shadows evident within the painting are created entirely by the artist and not by a specific light source. So in this image, we see that there are shadows, we see that there is an image, there is even potentially the implication of a window. If you look in the very foreground, there's a tiny little reflection of a window, but we can't see the light source. So as far as we're concerned, this image has an implied source of light. One of the most dramatic uses of light is an Italian technique called chiaroscuro. Literally meaning extreme light and dark, chiaroscuro was developed during the Baroque period in Italy. The two versions of Judith beheading Holofernes shown here employ chiaroscuro to create a sense of mystery and lend a sinister feeling to the images. The background in both images is almost entirely dark, and the brightly lit images in the foreground appear in shocking contrast. In this case, you usually will find a bold use of color to really stand out against the dark background. You get this really intense use of shadows. Thank you for listening to this first video. Please move on to the next one for the continuation of our discussion of formal elements.